Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
All right. Let's start up. I call the meeting to order. And let's do a pledge, if you could. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. All right, so let's do a roll call. Let's see who's here in person. Is Molly, Justice, Lee, and Ren. Do I have anyone online as well?
Dan is here.
Okay,
Paloma is here as well.
got it. And George is excused. He's got a death in the family, so,
And our attorney Drew is on as well.
okay. And the city administrator is in person. Okay. Let's do public comment. So this is the first opportunity for public comment. If you are in the physical audience and want to speak on any topic except a public hearing, you can do so now, and then there'll be a second opportunity after that. So,
Hi, good evening, Council. I'm Annie Rappelje. I'm representing the Parade of Green. We would like to thank you for your continued support in making this community event the success that it has grown to. I would like to invite you personally to come and take part in this parade. It is on March 11th at noon, and it is always a fun day. So we welcome you and thank you.
thank you very much.
Great.
Okay. Anyone else? Ben, anyone on the public, in the electronic version of the world?
1 moment, let me check. If you're on Zoom and you'd like to make a comment, please use the raise hand option at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a phone, you can press *9, and you will need to press *6 to unmute once called upon. If you're watching on YouTube, you will need to join the Zoom by visiting beaconny.gov. Right now we have one attendee online, but no hands raised.
Okay. Let me check again if anyone in the physical arena wants to make a comment. Okay.
Good evening, Thomas Wright, 24 Grove Street. I want to thank the mayor, the city council, administrator, attorney, and building inspector for their diligent work on the building electrification legislation. It's a very important piece of legislation. Bravo to all of you for giving this the attention it deserves. Please eliminate the conditional nature of the renovations as defined in the draft. 75% is a reasonable threshold and should be enough of a qualification to include it within the reach of this legislation. Put simply, if someone is spending this much on a renovation, it would not be a hardship to compel them to electrify their equipment. If there are those who are on the fence about electrification or are not aware of the benefits, this would serve to educate them and save them money and improve their indoor air quality, all while helping to achieve the goals listed in Section B of the draft. Any equipment being replaced should certainly be done so with electric equipment, so the word should be or instead of and. If there are concerns about enforceability, then perhaps this should be handled by the end-of-life clause elsewhere, or taken up in future efforts to electrify existing homes and businesses, but please do not let it weaken the renovation inclusion as it currently does. Please eliminate or dramatically reduce the delay for commercial construction. Concerns regarding limitations in technology and workforce are misplaced. As I mentioned in a previous comment, we heat our 55,000 square foot commercial building with heat pumps. These heat pumps and the ones used at the newly constructed Beacon Hip lofts are identical to the ones that are used in residential construction. 100 Flatbush in Brooklyn, currently under construction, is a mixed-use tower with over 400 residential units, 30,000 square feet of commercial, and is 100% electric. All of which is to say that the technology and workforce is readily available and already being put to use, even in buildings well over 7 stories. While more should be done to incentivize electrification in new construction and remodels, Lower operational costs and cleaner air are in themselves incentives, as is moving away from an energy system whose days are numbered, and for all the reasons noted in Section B, is increasingly bad business and a bad bet for banks. While I agree with the mayor's desire to rein in hardship exemptions, this cannot undermine the goals of the legislation itself. New industrial construction can be handled by exempting process energy for manufacturing, as Ithaca and New York City have done. However, I feel strongly that process energy should not serve as a carve-out for commercial kitchens. Restaurants are going all electric. This legislation will invite them to do so in Beacon.
15 seconds.
For the sake of all the reasons so well stated in Section B, make the legislation enforceable, but for those same reasons, make the legislation as inclusive and as stringent as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Clark Gedman, 2 Wilson. Good evening. There are so many different things I'd love to address, but time does not allow. So I will restrict it to just a few topics quickly. In preparation for the giveaway in terms of affordable housing to be considered on the 27th, I would like the council to consider a few facts that's pretty common public knowledge. And that is that quite a few tenants were chased out a few years back from that particular complex. And the second thing I'd like the council to figure is if you don't have a coherent understanding of the real value per tenant of this tax abatement that they're proposing to go out 40 years where HUD only does 20. And the effect on binding the city for a yield that is highly suspect in terms of its true value. The headlines read, "Council helps affordable housing." But in reality, the facts are that's highly subject to dispute. And unless the council employs the professionals that it so commonly uses to analyze the benefits and publish the benefits as to a factual understanding for the community, I would say the council doesn't do its job. And finally, Mr. Mayor, in all due respect, if I could be so judgmental, I would consider you the father of the current form of city government. And it goes back 3 decades. And it was perhaps very good and very beneficial to the city when its economic importance was not what it is today. And as the New York, and 20 years ago I came up from the city, right, from Brooklyn. As the demand for land here increases, so does the real estate politics. And so does the urgency for the money. And what we have here is we have a government that pays professionals, quote unquote,
15 seconds.
to advise you under the direction of a mayor and a city manager with no employee relationship that is normally derived in a city that has this kind of dynamic, which would better serve the taxpayers of the city of having employees
Your time
who
is
answer
left.
to the council directly.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Come tell us who you are and what you want. Thank you.
Good evening.
Of course.
Phil Stamatis, 8 Wilson Street, and to the mayor, Filimona Stamatis.
No. Malista.
I'd like to thank the council for confirming our new CAC members last week. It's super helpful to have a full committee to get stuff done on your behalf. We are still actively seeking more volunteers for working groups for like projects such as pollinator pathways, our compost group, recycling, open space inventory and open space planning, as well as our Fishkill Creek, Hudson River, and protection plans. I would like to thank Anthony Tsang for his years of service on the CAC. He has and will continue to take the shirt off his back for anyone here in this room. Anyone interested in helping us out can email beaconcac@beaconny.gov. They could email the mayor, Chris, anyone at the city, and I'm sure you'll forward it our way. Or you can shoot a direct message to Green Beacon Coalition on Instagram, get some updates that way too. I think it's fair to say we can put the Earth Day cleanup on your calendars for April 22nd. I've had some talks with Mark Price already. It's not super official, but I think it's fair to mark that date. Cleanup will be 9 a.m. to around 12 with most likely an after party afterwards. There will be a posted Google Doc for sign up with official locations coming hopefully within the month. I would like to thank the city administrator for addressing my concerns with our composting trash as well as other trash around the city. PSA for any Beacon citizen, if you see something that doesn't look right, even a construction facility or any city location, even not, shoot our government a call, shoot them a text or email, and they get stuff done pretty quick when you ask nicely. Mayor, you gave a State of the City address recently. I think your stats were a little off. You did say we composted 25,000 pounds of compost. That might be accurate, but currently to date we have 54,000 pounds citywide up to date, and that's still less than a year. The numbers are slowing down a little bit in the winter, but we will be ramping that up hopefully as the weather comes up too. I think that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Ευχαριστούμε. Yep. For the record, that was a thank you and a you're welcome in Greek. Okay. I think we're good for public comments. Ben, same?
Mayor, we do have one hand raised on Zoom now.
Oh, okay. Let's do it.
All right, this is John Pope.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Pope. I'm a volunteer with Food and Water Watch as well as the owner of John Pope Construction. We're a general contracting company based in Brooklyn and focused on residential renovation. I've just completed 2 electrification projects in 2022, and I was asked to speak tonight by my friend and colleague, Thomas Wright, about that experience. First, I'd like to briefly make some broad comments. Climate change is real, and climate change is here, and we can do something about it, but we need to act now. Now, in my mind, mandating that heating, cooling, domestic hot water, and cooking be decoupled from fossil fuels in new construction and major renovation is one of the most important things we can do right now. Certainly, it is the most important and immediate action that municipalities, developers, and contractors like me can take. We are able to decarbonize electrical production, but we are not able to decarbonize fossil fuel combustion. And if we don't create the housing stock now to use the electricity and the renewable energy of the future, then we will have lost a critical opportunity to make a real impact on climate change. Now, many of you probably know New York City enacted a gas ban, on new construction and gut renovation starting at the end of this year. And I had a couple clients get out ahead of that curve. My company completed 2 of these projects, and we removed all of the gas and went with air source heat pumps, electric water heaters, and induction stoves. They're both very happy with the results. The heating is quieter, consistent, cleaner, it's just more comfortable. The hot water is, I don't know what you can say about hot water, it's hot. And they're very happy with the induction cooking. They find it faster, better control, and without getting into the big stove debate, it's way safer. They are similar properties. One is a 2-floor single-family residence, the other a duplex with a garden apartment rental below. They've reported to me that their electric bill was roughly in the high 200s and the low 300s for December and January, respectively. Now, these are residential retrofits, which are by nature difficult projects. And as a contractor, I didn't find any additional complication or expense caused by the electrification. I'd like to thank everybody for their time and the opportunity for me to share my experience tonight. Spent many happy days enjoying all that Beacon has to offer, and you guys have some good food. But I believe to my core, both personally
15 seconds.
that electrification and new construction and major renovation of all buildings is the foundational act we need to fight the climate crisis. I look forward to Beacon take the rightful place as a leader and bring about a sustainable future. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay. I believe that's it, unless, Ben, you tell me something different. So let's go on to public hearings. Drew, you're going to tell me my process for adjourning this to February 27th? Is it just a motion?
Just a motion, that is correct.
Okay. So,
And Mayor, the reason for the adjournment is we're still working on a pilot agreement to bring to council. So I just wanted to let you know there's some work that needs to be done before this comes back to council.
right, and to recall for the public, this was adjourned a few weeks ago. When you adjourn it, you set a scheduled date. So it's scheduled for this one, but we're not quite ready to go. So I will look for a motion to adjourn the hearing to February 27th.
Motion. Second.
So that's Molly and Ren. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
And then online, just to confirm, I think I heard Dan.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good. Thank you both. All right, so let's do reports. Do we want to start online? You want to try that? Let's try that.
I can start. Mine is quite short. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, there's a community event coming up on February 25th, which is Beacon Spring. It is a celebration of light and the coming of spring in some of the darkest, most wintry days of the year. It starts at Pole Hill Park at 5:30. There's also a lantern making event at the Beacon Farmers Market this Sunday, which is from 10 to 2. And the planners encourage folks to make lanterns themselves, please all electric. And there will be a parade from Pole Hill Park to the yard at 4 Hannah Lane, and a celebration there. And I'm also looking forward to 2 weekends later participating in the Parade of Green. And I'm just excited that there are so many community gatherings planned for the coming months. And then my second item was requesting a clarification on our plan for the open space plan. I know when this was discussed, I think it was last week, there was an indication that we wouldn't take any steps until the summer, but it was clarified to me by members of the CAC that would actually result in a delay of an entire calendar year, which I don't think is appropriate. So would love to get some clarification on next steps there. I think this is a really important step for the city to take, the open space plan. It's in alignment with our climate goals. It's in alignment with our comprehensive plan, and want to make sure that we're moving forward in the most efficient way possible on that one. Thanks.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, thanks. So firstly, I have office hours this coming Sunday from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock at Trax at 1 East Main. So if you want to discuss any current business before the city or ideas that you have or any questions, challenges, etc., please stop by Trax on Sunday between 10 and 12. And then also there's a growing nationwide movement called No Mow May, which encourages people not to mow their lawns during the month of May. And the reason for this movement is because longer grass, it creates a better habitat for single bees, lone bees, non-hive bees, and other pollinators. It also gives a chance for dandelions and other low-growth flowers to grow, which are the only source of pollen during that time of year. Now, in order to do No Mow May, I want to before reaching out to a lot of folks, but I think this is an excellent idea. I just wanted to check in. Perhaps I can follow up with Chris or Nick about the idea of how this would work with our with our lawn maintenance laws, and whether we're able to waive those for 1 month. I did see some municipalities waived their lawn height requirements just for the month of May. I don't want to create a whole big thing. We have enough on our agenda, so if this requires a local law, we can just skip it. But I would like to see if there's something that we could do to help promote this, to complement a lot of the other work that myself and many others have been doing around promoting pollinators and insects in Beacon. Thanks.
Okay. How about Molly, and then we'll come across.
Sure. I would first like to thank the Beacon Fire Department, along with other first responders who helped respond to a fire that took place, I believe, last week at Tompkins Terrace. They were quickly on the scene, and they helped to make sure the fire was put out as quickly as possible, and then the Red Cross was able to support anyone who was displaced at that. There were a handful of people who unfortunately were displaced, but I understand they're being taken care of by the appropriate resources and are continuing to do so as long as they need that for. And so it's great to see the response of our first responders and also those who support the families there. And the other thing I wanted to comment was that I have my office hours on Friday, this coming Friday, the 17th, from 2 to 4 p.m. at Homespun Foods on Main Street. For anyone in Ward 1 who wants to stop by, or if you're not in Ward 1 and want to come by and say hi, I will be there. All right, Justice, over to you.
Thank you, Molly. I'm going to keep mine short as well. If you would, I'm not hosting office hours this month, but you can book an appointment with me almost any day. If you just visit my link website, it's linktr.ee/Justice McCray, and you can find helpful resources, or you can book an appointment with me if you want to talk about anything that's happening in the ward. And you're more than welcome to email me as well at jmccray@beaconny.gov. And that is all I have.
Okay. Red?
Thank you, Justice. The Parade of Green, I have to say, I'm hoping that it's not snowing. I'm thinking it probably won't be like it was last year, but that was a lot of fun, marching down Main Street in the snow. There are two events I wanted to mention. One is Thursday, celebrating and raising funds for the Foundation for Beacon Schools. They're holding a midwinter celebration on Thursday, and you can buy tickets at foundationforbeaconschools.org. They're also, you could save the date for their first ever inaugural gala on June 11th. And so that's very exciting. I also would like to echo Councilmember Wake's interest in pursuing the open space plan, the clarification that that the CAC has already done a lion's share of the work on this proposal, and that it would be that the rest of the work would be next year. So we really don't have to lean that much on the city. So similar to the CAC's application for the Lula Award, you know, they did the heavy lifting. They're a hardworking committee, and they're hard at work. And my office hours are scheduled by reaching out to me, wlongno@beaconny.gov. So just please reach out, and we'll find a time to meet. Thank you.
I'll also be brief. Just two items. One, I had the good fortune to attend an event to honor apparently the last living World War II vet in the region. It's a gentleman named Carmen Giordano, who was in the Army Air Force and apparently had a long career as a hairdresser in Beacon. I should be as spry as he is at 101. And then we also had a good call with NYSERDA. We've been trying to get to someone at the state to understand the their roadmap and why they've laid out different dates for different components of electrification. So we had a good conversation, and I think Nick was the one who took notes, and we'll bring it forward when we go to workshop next. And I think that's all I got. So, City Administrator?
I have two brief project updates to keep the council up to date. We have finished the asbestos and lead abatement at the Tompkins Hose Firehouse. That was a pre-construction phase of rehabilitating that firehouse. We now hope to go to bid at the end of February and then commence the reconstruction in April. The second project that I wanted to report on is the Fishkill Teller Avenue rehabilitation, which will redo that entire 1.9 miles of roadway and sidewalks, and that project is out to bid, and we will have those bids coming back in early March. So we have quite a bit of progress on those and hope to be bringing you contracts in March to approve. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Chris. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Chris, do you think sometime this spring you could do a presentation for the city to show the people what's actually going to be done and look at what they can expect and just the sheer scope and extent of this project and how important it is to the city?
On which project? On both?
Fishkill Teller.
I can talk to the engineer about it. Yeah, I would need the engineer to be here, and let me check on that.
Cool. I think people would like to hear about it before it gets started. It's pretty exciting.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I'll try to line that up for a workshop.
Okay. So let's go on to local laws and resolutions. We've got 4 to work on. So the first one is a resolution approving agreement with Carrion Walls, which is for HVAC maintenance here in the municipal building. Let's get a motion in a second, then Chris can tell us a little bit more.
Motion. Second.
So Justice and Wren. And then Chris, you want to give us any details?
Sure. This is a 2-year contract to maintain the HVAC system here at City Hall. It's at a cost of $28,260 annually. That's the reason this is coming to you, because we now have a $20,000 threshold for approval of contracts, where anything above that limit has to come to City Council. We've used Carrion Walsh for a number of years and have had great experience with them, so we're trying to continue with that.
Okay. Any discussion, questions? And the amount of the contract you're going to sign?
I'm sorry?
Do you know the amount?
Yes, $28,260.
Right, and the amount that you can sign without coming to council is 20?
Up to 20.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. All right, all in favor of that one, say aye.
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 I heard both of the onlines. Any noes? Okay, that carries. Next one is a resolution accepting a sight line easement at 46 Judson Street. Let's get a motion in a second, and then Drew can take us through it.
Motion.
Motion.
I'll be the second.
So is that Dan?
Yes.
Okay, and Molly? So that's a motion and a second. Drew, will you tell us what a sight line easement is?
Absolutely. So last year, the planning board did a 2-lot subdivision at 46 Judson Street. It is on a corner lot, so part of the planning board approval required a sightline easement. What that means is that there is a sightline area that has to remain clear and unobstructed, so that there is a clear sightline at the intersection of Union Street and Judson Street. What the sightline easement says is that the property owner is obligated to maintain this clear triangular area. If they fail to maintain the area, the city of Beacon is permitted to go on the property and clear it, but you are not obligated to do so.
Okay.
And that's that.
Thank you, Drew. Any questions from the council?
If I recall, there was a question from last week about the setback distance requirement. Is that answered?
That would have been set by the planning board, Paloma, and that would have been part of a study and they would have determined what the adequate sightline area is. I want to say 30, but I shouldn't say any number because I don't have it in front of me.
Sorry, not the setback of the building, but the 10 feet of the sightline easement.
It was a question I raised on the diagram, on the site plan. It shows it going 10 feet up Union and 10 feet up Judson. And I was wondering what the origin of where those numbers came from, whether that was like some kind of codified requirement, whether it was something the planning board came up with.
Yeah, so Dan, to answer your question, that's something the planning board comes up with. It's going to be unique to the intersection and what the appropriate sightline distance is for that particular area. So I think there are standards that they usually rely on, but it's evaluated on a case-by-case basis and determined by the planning board. And that's with the, consultants involved.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Okay. And for those looking at the map, it's the little triangular crosshatched area on the corner of that lot, right? And the two, it's a right triangle, and the two right angles, the two legs are 10 feet each, right? That's what we're working with. Drew, I've got that right?
Yes, you have that exactly correct.
Okay. Any other discussion from the council? All right, so all in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? And let me just confirm the two onlines.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. Okay. Then the next item is an amendment to the 2023 general fund budget. And if we can get a motion a second, Chris will tell us the details.
Motion?
Second.
So Molly and Ren. And Chris, will you take us through that?
Sure. So this is our first budget amendment for the 2023 budget. It is proposing to transfer $20,003 from the contingency fund to the capital fund to cover the cost of a traffic signal motion detection camera to be installed on Main Street in Wolcott. And as we discussed at the workshop, these cameras are basically just simple motion detectors. They don't have any facial recognition. They aren't like traffic cameras that record speeding or stop signs and hand out tickets like they have in London. What they do is they allow more efficient use of the intersection so that if a car is waiting, no other cars are coming, that car, the light will then change. It also does, if the pedestrian does cross, that pedestrian has the right of way once that turns. So it wouldn't turn the signal back if a pedestrian has the right of way. Again, I think we have a 15 or 20 second pedestrian crossing. So we realized we needed to go to the cameras because when we were doing milling and paving, the devices that are in the pavement that do this tend to get really broken up and destroyed. So we're going to put them on poles so that as we mill and pave in the future and we also do plowing, we don't damage these units. So we need a budget amendment to do that.
All right. So all in favor of amending the general fund budget by that amount for this item, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And did we hear the onlines?
Aye.
Aye.
Now we did, for sure. Great, thank you all. And then the next one is also just setting a public hearing. So this is a proposed local law regarding electrification of new construction. And we want to set a public hearing for what date?
The 27th.
So the 27th of February. So I'm looking for a motion and a second on that.
Motion.
Motion.
So that sounded like Ren and Paloma. And again, we're just simply setting the public hearing. And any discussion on that?
And just to clarify, Lee, it sounds like NYSERDA, anything else at our next workshop on the 21st, that we can expect that to be on our agenda
Yeah.
in discussing.
Yeah, that's
Thank
what we're
you.
thinking.
And we also have the building inspector attending for the next workshop.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Yeah, I
Yeah.
had that
Yeah.
question. I appreciate that. And
All right.
thank you, Bruce.
So this is for setting a public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
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 I heard the onlines as well, so any nays? There won't be any because I heard a unanimous. That's great. And then I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes of January 30th.
Motion?
So that's Molly and
Second.
Justice. Any changes, additions, commentary on our minutes from January 30th?
I could not find any.
Okay. There's either a well-hidden Easter egg or there isn't one. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And I heard the two onlines. Any nays? Not hearing any. So let's do our second opportunity for public comment. I can tell you that the courtroom that we're sitting in won't have any further comments from anyone in the physical presence here. Ben, can you tell us whether there's anyone online who hasn't made a comment that would like to?
There is not.
Okay. What should we do next?
I'm curious, as it's brought up, this idea of future agenda items, not to get into full workshop discussion, but the open space that was brought up. If Chris, if you could comment on capacity, I think you had some thoughts about that, just to get context about whether or not we should set this up for a fuller meeting at a workshop coming up.
Well, I'm not clear that we finished the discussion on the city council priorities, because whether or not we have the bandwidth to do this will depend on what you want done this year. As we discussed, we put money in the budget for various studies. All of them both take money and time. Even when a committee supports it, an initiative, it does end up costing us a lot of time here. Like the compost program, we're probably dozens of hours into that in staff time and still trying to figure out how to deal with things that just never got planned. I think it depends on what you want as your priority. If you want to do a study of the community center, I'm probably not going to have the bandwidth for that. So I don't know that we made a list of things, but we didn't prioritize anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I really don't have a lot of direction on a prioritization. Means this is the first thing we want to do, this is the second thing, and then you see how far down the list you can get. So maybe we go back to priorities and see if we can go from just a list to actually prioritizing that list, so I can understand. And again, we don't have a lot of extra capacity. I've told the CAC that I don't view the open space plan as time sensitive, because they're looking for it to be done before the comprehensive plan is done in 2027. We do have a lot of time sensitive things this year, though. If you want to continue the community center feasibility study, that's going to take a lot of time. We have a lot of capital projects that are really going to stretch our abilities this year. So it wouldn't be something that I would choose to do this year.
Chris, do you know yet, and maybe a question for you and the mayor, is there capacity at our workshop on Tuesday next week to continue that priorities and list discussion? Not just about open space, but about what we want to maybe do next?
Yeah, I don't see why we can't do
Sure.
that, right? Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
May I speak to the timeline of the?
And just for the benefit of the public, whether or not you were at last workshop, I put together a list, and I am updating that list and actually adding another, taking out one category and adding another that tries to clarify what sort of stuff that is already in the pipeline is happening, either city operations or capital projects, and then ones that are things for discussion, like you're talking about, that we want to add into that. So, and I will share that out so we can have it for the workshop next week if it makes that agenda.
Okay.
And if I may, Mayor, just to speak to the timeline of, I think what the CAC is proposing to do is just submit an application for a grant that is due, I think in April or March, but then there's a process for whether or not we receive that grant, and then the actual work would be done next year.
So we don't even have a grant writer on staff right now. And I've tried to convey this to the CAC. We have a project that's come up since we discussed doing the open space plan last year, which is putting into effect a new dewatering system for a wastewater treatment plant. We're focused on getting a $2.2 million grant on that. I have engineers working on that, and I've been doing that more, moving away from a general grant writer to expert grant writers who are, they do wastewater, they do water. So it's not as easy as just send it over to the grant writer and they'll do that. Additionally, all of these studies take a lot of support. So if you want them done well, I think you need to have a conversation before you say, let's do X. What are your goals? Why are we doing that? And what's the anticipated outcome? The anticipated outcome here is, as detailed in an email by the CAC, was to have this ready for the comprehensive plan. We could apply for a grant any year before that and do this. And I've tried to convey to the council the volume of work that we have coming up this year. Like somebody's got to watch all of these projects. We have $20 million in projects just in the two that I mentioned earlier. Doing these studies might seem like, well, it's not a lot, but you all ask us to do things every day, like follow up on doing this. I want you to go to Hedgewood and do this. All of that takes time. So again, it's what don't you want us to do this year in order to add something new? It was interesting, none of you in your priorities put this on the list, but then the CAC calls you and it's on your list. Now, I can't plan a work program like that. You actually have to kind of figure out what your priorities are, and then we'll try to figure out how we do as many of them as we can.
Thank you, Chris. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that the request was for next year, not this year's priorities, but it sounds like that's clear.
No, I think none of you requested this prior to the CAC reaching out this year. You had asked about it, but I didn't know that it was going to be this year until we had a round of emails in which, because we said, I said that I don't have the bandwidth to do this. And again, if you want to say, let's put the community center on hold, I can open up the bandwidth to do that.
Great. I just wanted to
I'm
make
going
sure
to
it was
push
clear
back
that
on
it was
that a
for
little
grant
bit
writing.
and say that we actually did
Mayor,
discuss
this
during
is
the budget
becoming a
conversations.
workshop. Can we workshop this? Because this is a regular meeting, and we're well beyond the scope of a few comments.
Yeah, I would.
Okay, I just want to fact check the fact that we have been
Then I'm going to
discussing
fact
this
check
as a priority.
you, Paloma.
Hang on a second. Please, Paloma, go ahead.
I'm sorry, we don't have to have a whole conversation about this right now, but I do want to say that we have discussed this as a priority. And the last time that we discussed this was during the budget conversations in the fall of last year, not just in the last week.
Nobody
Okay.
put it on the list of priorities that you considered it a workshop. So again, tell me what you want to come off the priority list, and we'll make room for it.
So I will say this is a discussion we'll put into workshop. I will add one thing, which is I believe this administration gets more things done than anyone has in an age. And I just want us to be mindful of what we're asking. So let's have that discussion. We'll do it next week as part of our workshop. And if, Molly, you have a revised list, that will help. That's great. And let's just, figure out how to have it there where we can have a workshop. Okay? Is everyone good with that? So now what do we do? I was trying to look for a motion to adjourn unless someone has
I
something
think Drew
else.
was trying to say something.
Drew?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to go back to one thing I was thinking about after Dan's question on the Judson Street site easement. The code requires 25 feet, and then that gets evaluated as whether that's sufficient, and it's 25 feet from the intersection. So Mayor, you were correct. The site easement area is the hatched area on the plans. It's the 10 feet by 10 feet triangle. well, you know what I'm talking about, 10, 10, 10. But the 25 feet is the dotted line from the intersection, and the makeup of the rest of the area outside our little, 10 and 10 triangle is owned by the property already, which is why this site easement isn't 25 feet. So I wanted to clarify. And actually, they're doing 30. They went a little bigger because that's what, is necessary for that intersection. So I apologize. I just wanted to clarify for the record what's happening there.
Okay, the record will reflect it.
And just to add to that, for anyone listening in who wants a visual, if you go to our agenda items, you'll see there's a dotted line that kind of almost goes from curb edge to curb edge, that I think represents that, in this case, 30, it says as 25 required, and then this includes 30. So if you have curiosity about that and want a visual, you can look at our packet for that as well.
Yep, that's on the subdivision plan. I think I got distracted because my husband got me a cockroach for Valentine's Day.
How romantic.
I know, so romantic. I really swear we have a good marriage, but cockroach.
Okay. I will now go
We'll
fishing.
add that to the public record, Drew.
I will now go fishing for a motion to adjourn.
On that note, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, so Molly and Ren, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
Thank you all, and try to enjoy the rest of Valentine's Day.
Recording